Hello, I'm Gina Florzak, Marketing Project Manager with the CCIM Institute, and welcome to today's webinar, How Sustainability is a Differentiator in Commercial Real Estate, sponsored by Honeywell. We're happy to share this webinar with everyone in the industry. Joining us today is Jose Castellanos, Offering Manager for Commercial Real Estate, and Sunil Prajapati, Senior Director of Sales, also with Honeywell. They'll be discussing why sustainability is essential for commercial real estate, adoption of sustainable technologies to better position your building in the market, transforming your assets into sustainable properties, problems landlords and tenants currently face, and how AI is utilized in CRE to balance health, comfort, energy, and sustainability. Please feel free to ask questions throughout using the Q&A tab. We'll be answering as many as we can at the end of the discussion. And if you experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature to ask for help. The recording will be emailed to all registered attendees. Jose and Sunil, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. I'll turn the show over to you.
Thank you, Gina, for your intro, and thank you to everyone in the audience. It's a pleasure to be here and having a discussion with Sunil, who is someone who's very knowledgeable, has a lot of experience in building automation and with Honeywell. Welcome, Sunil. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Jose. Happy to be here. Really excited to have this discussion. My name is good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sunil Prajapati. I lead the global sustainability sales within Honeywell Building Technologies. I have a very interesting job here where I get to interact with a lot of customers on a day-to-day basis, where we help them to advance towards their sustainability journey by enabling multiple technologies, whereby we not only reduce the energy consumption, make an impact on carbon footprint, but at the same time, we provide them efficient building operations. I'm also responsible to create the go-to-market strategy and implement and make it work. So very happy to share, to chat about sustainability relevance to premium commercial real estate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sunil. And I'll provide a brief intro on myself. Jose Castellanos. I am an offering manager for the commercial real estate vertical. So it's predominantly office buildings, stadiums, convention centers. And my job is basically how can we look at all the different technologies and systems that are in a building, in a commercial building, and how can we integrate them? How can we offer better solutions on top of our existing products to provide critical outcomes for our customers? So with that, Sunil, we'll go ahead and get started. So sustainability is a very hot topic. We hear customers talking about it. We have industry experts talking about it. It's definitely a very important topic for government and regulations. So I'd like your point of view as why is it so important for everyone in 2022 and now looking in 2023? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting and a very important topic, Jose. Maybe I'll start with a couple of numbers, 51 billion and zero. 51 billion is the metric tons which globally greenhouse gas emissions we emit towards the environment on an annual basis. And zero is where we need to get to. So our target is to get from 51 billion metric ton to a zero. And if you look at buildings emit roughly about 40% of these carbon emissions. And most of the emissions come from about building operations. Roughly about 27% are attributed towards operating these buildings. Now, as we are coming out of the COVID era, you see a big shift or trend happening in the market where investors are diverting their funds towards corporations which are more mature towards their environmental, social governance journey. And if you look at typical investor ratings like Morningstar or Bloomberg, you will find an ESG maturity index based on which investors are diverting their funds. So basically, investors are pushing corporations to sign up a pledge. Corporations are signing up a hard or a soft pledge to become net neutral by 2030, 2035. Now, Many times, I mean, they do not know where to start with, what to do next. Sustainability is a vast field. It is quite complex at times. And most of the time, I mean, if you are pledging to become carbon neutral by 2035, you have to start your journey now. I mean, you cannot wait till 2032 and say, I'm going to try to get to my net neutral goals by in 3 years. So which is where, I mean, regulations, I mean, it is around the corner for us. You see SEC, US Securities and Exchange Commission will be coming up, I mean, with a charter around sustainability. There will be a price for carbon. Now, we want to make sure that commercial real estate is prepared when it comes to the market, so that, we are not caught off guard. So 2023 and going forward, I think you're going to see a lot of push around sustainability. Commercial real estate being the core of buildings, it is extremely important for the buildings to adopt this and join the bandwagon, I mean, towards the net neutrality journey.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of what I'm also hearing from our customer base. 40% of carbon footprint in the world comes from the built environment, and whether it's office, industrial, housing. So it's definitely it's a big chunk of what we have to look to improve as a society. And as you mentioned, we hear it's very common for companies to go out and say, we have a pledge, or this is our sustainability strategy. But also, time passes. So if you're a company who made a pledge, in 2020, well, 2 years have gone by, and that means we have less time. So it's always a good idea to get on that sustainability journey. But I'd be interested to hear what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing with our customers when they're looking to implement and execute those carbon neutral pledges and strategies.
Yeah, again, I mean, a great question, Jose. I on a day-to-day basis, I interact with multiple customers, and the customers are in different categorized in different buckets. Some of them are just starting on their sustainability journey. Some of them, I mean, a niche segment is quite advanced in their sustainability journey. But all across the board, I mean, you will hear, hey, how do I start? I mean, where do I go from here? I've signed up this pledge. Where does this take me? How do I prioritize my funding? How do I prioritize my projects and budget? What are my low-hanging fruits? So these are common questions, I mean, what you hear. And that is where, I mean, we follow a very streamlined process within Honeywell to work with our customers. I mean, it starts with we need to simplify the complex. We need to break it down into sizable chunks, which can be implemented by the customers and help them advance towards their sustainability journey. So that is where, I mean, you will quite often hear, I mean, how do I start? How do I measure? How do I baseline my building? How do I know, I mean, what am I emitting? What are the requirements for environmental, social governance reporting? How do I capture it at a portfolio level and do it as an enterprise level? So these are very common questions, I mean, what you hear from corporate or portfolio building operators.
Absolutely, and that's great life advice, Sunil. Breaking down big tasks into smaller ones, definitely in sustainability. And I hear the same thing on my end whether I'm talking to a building developer, whether a tenant, or somebody with just a single building versus a portfolio. It's and as you said, some companies, some customers are further along on that journey. But if it's breaking down into smaller, more digestible plans, and then getting one is the correct internal stakeholder to execute the plans, and some companies have fully developed sustainability teams in other places. It's sort of like a second job or night job for some others. But as we've said, and I think it's going to be a common theme throughout our chat today, it's a very important topic that it just cannot, I think, financially and environmentally, companies cannot afford to not pay attention, or put it on the back burner of importance maybe next year. I think this is front front and center for everyone.
Yeah, no, completely agree, Jose, because what is happening is many times most of the organizations, I mean, if you look at sustainability, I mean, sometimes it rolls up to legal, sometimes it rolls up to the CEO, sometimes it rolls up to the finance team, sometimes it rolls up, I mean, to the director of operations. So, but I think that awareness, that maturity is happening. I mean, that is definitely happening. I mean, you are no longer, I mean, pushing a boulder uphill. You are actually, I
Yes.
mean, pushing it to open doors where customers are more receptive. They want to talk about sustainability and they want to see how we can embrace it and move it along.
Absolutely. So when when it comes to starting that sustainable journey and path, with it comes, well, how do you get there? What are the tools to get there? And one of them, thankfully, is technology. So in your opinion, how does the adoption of sustainable technology better position a building in the market in terms of, potential, how desirable is it to be in a building? From, if you're a tenant, why is it important to you if a certain building has certain characteristics of with sustainability in mind?
Yeah, that's again a very critical aspect, Jose. So let's break it down. I mean, I think there are two aspects to it. One is from the landlord perspective, and then there is the tenant side of it. So from the landlord perspective, I mean, the matter of fact is, actually, I mean, if you do not implement sustainable technologies, if you do not proceed towards your sustainability goals, your assets will not be as valuable. You will be left with standard assets. And over a period of time, I mean, you will not be the market leader. You typically, I mean, at commercial real estate, I mean, there are two critical items we look for, right? I mean, it is the tenant, the occupancy rates and the rental rates. And evidence, there is enough evidence to show that, I mean, when you implement sustainable technologies, the value of your assets grows over time. And likewise, I mean, there are certifications out there in terms of LEED certification, WELL certification, which position you as a market leader. So from a landlord perspective, I mean, if you are implementing the right aspects, you are actually lowering your building operating cost. You would be able to provide tenant better facilities at the same time, I mean, at a much better price, where you can still compete with others out there. Now, from a tenant perspective, you look at today's generation, you look at consumers, you look at investors. I mean, all of them are looking at green type of facilities. Like, how do I make sure that the buildings which I'm operating, which I'm utilizing, is safer, healthier, and at the same time, I mean, provides a good working condition for us. And sustainability kind of, I mean, has that overarching framework where you would be providing tenants all of that, I mean, which they are looking for. A better environment, a safer environment, a healthier environment, ensuring there is comfort, ensuring indoor air quality. So from a tenant perspective, if I do not get in hot or cold complaints, I think you are going to increase your tenant satisfaction. So your tenant satisfaction scores will go up. So, which is why I think sustainability matters to both the landlord as well as tenant these days. And you will hear this a lot, I mean, from as you interact with multiple parties. I mean, you're going to hear this quite a bit throughout this year and many more years to come.
Absolutely, I agree. I think so. Regardless if you're a building owner or a tenant, and there's I guess the question of who pays for the technology. Well, in most cases, it's going to be the building owner who gets the benefits. Well, that would the building owners, as you said. I've also heard reports where tenants are willing to pay more for a greener building. Both because it financially makes sense, you'll be saving more money and energy, but also it helps you towards your carbon neutrality pledges, your sustainability strategy. So I agree. In my conversations with building developers, they'll say, well, 10 years ago in my market, nobody had a gym in the building. So that was my differentiator. Now, everybody's doing it. And I think, because sustainability is such an important topic now, on the environmental side, I think at the end of the day, we all want a better tomorrow for future generations. And that's the responsibility that, all of us have who are in the industry, and whether we're developing the technology or we're constructing buildings or we're leasing space to provide the products and services that any company sells. It's up to us to make the decisions to make a change, and that's where we're at now. I think there's a lot going on in the market, with hybrid work. And, a lot of companies are looking, okay, so what does that mean for my real estate portfolio? So there's been a little of shift in power. Tenants want shorter leases, more flexible leases. So I see, sustainability is a true differentiator now for landlords. And, from the tenant side, aside from, meeting your sustainability goals and ESG reports and, the optics behind going on that sustainability journey, we have to be cognizant of the fact of, Gen X and Gen Z are, very much more aware of sustainability. Gen Y and Gen Z are more aware of sustainability, and they actually ask their employers, hey, what are you doing? They no longer want to see, paper cups and disposable utensils. They're much more environmentally aware than I think prior generations were. So this is also a differentiator to, attract and retain talent. So in the end, it's a win-win situation. And, I guess if we look at, business-wise, the landlord wins, the tenant wins, the employee wins, and most importantly, the environment wins. And I know I sound, very optimistic about it, but I think that's the path where we all want to go. I mentioned hybrid work, Sunil, and I'll start off by saying, I think we're at a stage where every employer in the world is looking at what that means for them in terms of, what system works best, is how many days in the office, how many days at home. There's, a lot of companies have come out with one strategy only to pull back and move forward again. And that's because, it's sort of a trial and error experiment. When it comes to sustainability, how does the hybrid office affect operations, and what is the impact on sustainability from a strategy standpoint?
Right. Look, COVID has taught us a lot of things, Jose, right? I mean, like within Honeywell, we were always focused upon providing a safer, better, healthier environment solutions to our customers. But COVID brought that renewed focus of importance of health and well-being of occupants and people who utilize these facilities. During the COVID era, and as we are coming out of the pandemic, we see those flex schedules, or three days work from office, 2 days work from home, and we see those kind of things, hybrid environment being superimposed. Now, before COVID started, your buildings was running at 100%, your systems were running at 100% or 95%, whereby most of the occupants were in the premises. Now, during COVID and after COVID, we have seen that trend where you may have only 50% occupancy, you may have only a third occupancy or 90% occupancy, but your building systems, most of your building systems are still tuned to your original conditions, where they are still running at 100% occupancy level. And whereby, we are just wasting energy. We are not optimizing the system. So we enable technologies. When I speak with customers, we enable technologies like Honeywell Building Sustainability Manager, where we take the data from all these building systems to the cloud, and we overlay it with analytics. We normalize that data, we curate it, we run it through AI ML models, and we derive new settings based on the actual demands, based on the heating demands, cooling demand, the occupancy demand, the lighting requirements. A lot of these parameters go into play, and we determine new settings for the building systems. And from the cloud, we route it down to the building system, where the building systems respond to it and correct the end devices to these new settings. And all of this, Jose, is done in an autonomous way without much human intervention, which is humanly, very difficult to do it, every 15 minutes. Whereby, cloud with AI, ML technology, you're constantly learning your buildings and optimizing it. So what that does is, say for example, if your building is only a third occupied, now you do not need a person in the boiler room to go and tune your boiler to a third occupancy level. The system automatically knows what is your heat load, what is your cooling load, what is the lighting load requirement, based on the outdoor lighting conditions. So the systems have the capacity to either dim the lights, shut down certain circuits, at the same time tone down some of the equipment, HVAC equipment, your chiller, boiler, air handling units. So multiple optimization strategies come into play, where we go and implement it. And because you want to avoid waste, right? A key to sustainability is, how do I remove waste? Because the moment I'm going to remove waste, my equipment is going to become more efficient. So you are not only optimizing the equipment, at the same time, you're actually improving the overall life cycle of this equipment. So you're getting multiple benefits by doing it. And that is where, sustainability becomes a very critical play, especially in hybrid environment. If you do things manually, we will tend to forget. And then, eventually the equipment will break down at some point, or there will be dissatisfaction by the tenants. They're going to complain, that, hey, we do not have enough heating or cooling or air conditioning or lighting, which we need to do our job. So that is where, all the more implementing sustainability type of technologies becomes very critical in this hybrid environment. And as we go further, because you will also realize that all of a sudden, I do not need all this extra space. Maybe I can manage with lesser space. So optimization is the key. If you optimize it, you are going to eliminate waste. You are going to reduce your energy consumption. Energy consumption has a direct correlation with carbon. So you reduce energy, you reduce carbon, and then you are well off on your journey of net neutrality.
Absolutely, and what you mentioned is absolutely true. I think for the past couple of years, we see that there's a compromise between the healthy aspect of ventilation, where I think we're all more aware of the environments we breathe in and that we touch as a result of the pandemic. So if you want to bring 100% or increase your fresh air intake, and have your AC running constantly, to move air and let it circulate, that goes, directly against your sustainability targets and your energy consumption. Whereas, the opposite is, okay, if you want to, generate energy savings and reduce your energy consumption, well, that means that you've got to, circulate less air and less fresh air coming in from the outside. But what you mentioned now with Honeywell Sustainability Manager and internal building optimizer is, we essentially eliminate that compromise because it's sort of demand based, correct?
Absolutely, it is demand based, and we also provide some key features to our customers, whereby customers, imagine a case, where somebody walks in, with COVID, and all of a sudden, we feel a need, hey, we should purge this particular zone. So we also provide customers the ability to run your facility or particular zones in different modes. You can run it in a healthy mode feature, or you can run it in a balance mode, which is kind of that sweet spot where you are not compromising at all on your indoor air quality, on your comfort requirements, but at the same time, you're maximizing your assets and equipment in terms of higher energy efficiency. So absolutely, if we try to put people to do these things, it will be done, but in a very clunky way, and at the end of the day, you're not going to see the results what technology can deliver. So it is critical that we implement these type of systems throughout your facility to maximize your energy efficiency.
Absolutely, and integration is a topic that I want to touch with you a little later in our conversation. But since it came up, Can you tell us what are, what kind of information input goes into, determining these efficient, HVAC and ventilation operations within a particular space? What kind of data points are we getting?
Yeah, again, that is a very good thought, Jose, or a question. You typically look at, your building management system. They would have, integration with most of the HVAC assets. Many times, you go into a building, you will see lighting systems interfaced. You will also see PIR or motion sensors, occupancy sensors, card access systems. So there are a variety of different ways, we can get intelligence out of the building. Now, all of these building systems can be connected through a smart gateway and stream the data points to the cloud. So most of the instrumentation typically exists within a building. If indoor air quality was not there, like a CO2 sensor or a smart indoor air quality sensor, which can measure particulate emission 2.5 or volatile organic compounds, those can be implemented. Now we have combination sensors which can do, one sensor can do multiple jobs, and that feeds into your AI ML technology that basically feeds into the cloud, where that data is normalized. You look at historical data, you look at climate conditions that particular day, you marry it with the weather AI information, and at the same time you have different occupancy levels, lighting levels. So you name a system. Most of these systems are vendor agnostic, so you can implement it, you can save the customer's investment, and you can implement, overlay these systems across any platform, bring in these variety of different building system information into the cloud, and convergence is the key, right? Because the moment you converge different building systems, now you are able to take much more intelligent actions, right? Now you can become really very smart by implementing based on how many people are on a certain floor or in a conference room. You can either dim it, you can shut it down, lighting, you can tone down your HVAC systems. You can really become extremely optimized throughout your facility operations.
Absolutely. And so alongside, when I mentioned sustainability is one of the most important topics, the other one, and not the subject of this call, but it's sort of occupant experience. And how do you convince people to return to the office? And, I think what you mentioned goes hand in hand. I think we've all been in a conference room where maybe, there's more people in there than it should be. And what happens is the temperature increases, and by the time somebody notices, it's too late. People aren't comfortable, not having a great time. The air quality is not the best. And then it takes time to correct, and you might as well, the meeting will have ended, and the conditions didn't improve in time. So there's definitely, the benefit of everything being, automated and sort of, driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning. One question, when you mentioned it's at the beginning, the journey to get started, and the complexity that some people might see it. What would be a suggestion from you for, and then you mentioned vendor agnostic, which I think in building automation is extremely important nowadays. As you mentioned, customers, clients have made investments. And I wanted your take on now that the industry is moving towards being vendor agnostic and giving customers the possibility to see a plethora of offerings. How can customers get started in that journey? Just what's a simple first step that they can take towards implementing and getting an idea and a plan?
Yeah. So it's like with any other system, Jose. It's whatever you can see, you can monitor, measure, you can control, and you can improvise upon it. So the first step, what we advise to our customers, where we work with them is, hey, let's start monitoring your system, right? Let's start with assessing what are your emission levels. Let's start baselining it. If you look at environmental, social governance requirements, they are supposed, customers are supposed to report out their scope 1 and scope 2 carbon emissions. Now, scope 1 being any fossil fuel you are directly consuming within the facility. It could be natural gas, or it could be petroleum, and for your fleet you may be running. So anything direct fossil fuel you are burning within your facility, whether it is natural gas, petrol, oil, that's deemed as scope 1. Scope 2 is anything indirect, meaning you are buying from the grid. You're buying energy, electricity from the grid to run your building operations. The grid in turn is actually burning some fossil fuel to generate that energy. So that is deemed as scope 2. Now, part of ESG requirement, you have to report out both scope 1 and scope 2. There is a scope 3 as well, which gets much more complex into life cycle and entire value chain. But that is still maturing out there in the market. But 1 and 2 are critical to report. So where we advise our customers is, let's start understanding what your carbon footprint is. How much money actually are you spending in terms of energy to run your facility? What does your consumption level look like? You go to a typical building, you will find 3 key utility meters. There will be an electric meter, there will be a gas meter, and then there will be a water meter. So these 3 key utilities, let's start understanding how much are you spending? What does that equate to in terms of carbon? Now, once you have that measurement, and if you are operating a portfolio of buildings, let's start comparing and contrasting which is the outlier, because you want to start working on those outliers. The moment you have a baseline, you know some of your outliers. Now you can get into advanced control systems, right? You can start implementing in some control strategies on how to bring my outliers down to the baseline. Then you start optimizing them. You implement autonomous controls, whereby again, let the system do the work for us, right? Let it intelligently identify what are those anomalies, and not only identify, correct them, right? Because identifying is fine. But what do we do with that? Let it automatically correct it. So start with monitoring, then go and control it. Then you go and optimize. Once you are at that point, then you start thinking about, how do I decarbonize now? Now, how do I bridge the gap between my supply and demand? Because I could be buying, I have options. I'm a customer. I have multiple options. I can be buying green power. I could be buying brown power. Now, how do I know what time of the day should I use green versus brown? I may have a renewable energy resource right in my facility, on-site generation using solar. I may have a battery storage device. Now, how do I know at what time of the day I should use what, so that I can optimize my facility? So we have, again, advanced control modules within Sustainability Manager, which kind of bridges all of this. It will also do dynamic load management, meaning identifying your non-critical loads based on machine learning, based on artificial intelligence and IoT devices, and automatically decide at what time of the day, based on real-time pricing, we should be operating on brown power versus green power, versus discharging my battery so that I can limit my peak demand and not have to pay that extra penalties. You go to in major cities like New York, Boston, you pay heavy penalties on peak demand. So it is critical to limit your peak demand. And how can all this be done in an automated fashion? That is where it becomes critical. So once you have decarbonized, then you're off to the races, to get to your net zero journey.
Thank you, Sunil. And I think, when you sort of spoke about the different things that, that need to be done, and what systems and meter, and obviously technology plays a big part. And I kept thinking about, digitalization and what the future brings, and, for having, multiple sites connected, and how that all leads to reporting and the different aspects of it. So just, on that note, I just wanted to ask you, it doesn't have to be on sustainability specific, but what technology are you most excited about, for 2023? It could be for the next decade, when it comes to building automation and buildings.
Now you're making me think, Jose. So look, I'm a very family-oriented man. I love traveling with my family. When I think about technology, what comes to my mind, which is invigorating, is transportation. Flying cars are very close to us. Right? Very soon, we'll be hopping into a flying car and taking a short trip or a short vacation. Autonomous cars, again, self-driven vehicles. That's again something quite fascinating. What is happening now? If I want to take it a step level, take it one level above that, if I mean, I live in Long Island, New York. So if I have to go to Washington, D.C., can I get into that Hyperloop and get to Washington, D.C. in 29 minutes? It's coming. It is happening with the Hyperloop technology. And again, I mean, if I want to really, I mean, game it up, how do I go from LA to Sydney in 30 minutes? So the starships are coming where we would be, I mean, transporting ourselves on a fly, I mean, to different parts of the world. And what is the most fascinating, Jose, I mean, where I really get extremely excited is I could be sitting in my living room in New York and teleporting myself or my avatar to any part of the world and having this conference or having this discussion. So it really gets me excited and piped up. I mean, when we think about some of these transportation technologies, which are very close to us, I mean, the future is coming much faster than we think, and it is real and it is happening.
Absolutely. And you sound like a true visionaire. You took my mind through a journey imagining all these different technologies. And I think, they all start somewhere, right? It's having the thought, it's how do we get there? I'll tell you, for example, now that I think there will be studies done on the pandemic and how it's affected, the life of every human being on the planet, whether it's supply chain, obviously, the medical issues and schools being remote. I think, in sort of in our everyday lives as employees, we were sent home, right? And what made it possible to sort of be resilient and maintain operations was technology. I think technology, always pushes different industries, different aspects into new boundaries. I know ChatGPT, for example, has been in the news recently, and what can AI do for me? I think is a question a lot of companies are asking themselves. If applying, I guess, the same question to sort of work and what the problems that we try to solve for customers. And this applies to also, I think, our personal lives as well, is anything that is considered smart nowadays, which seems to be a lot of things. I consider something a smart device basically something that makes my life easier, right? If it reduces the time it takes me to do something, if it provides a better, faster service than with a non-smart device. In buildings and in our Charlotte headquarters, which you can see in our background as an example, is buildings used to just be a physical place where people sat down to get work done. If we talk about the biggest inventions or the biggest upgrades prior to the 21st century was at the end of the 19th century, there was an electricity ran in a building in New York City, and that was a first. In the 20th century, elevators or lifts allowed us to go from 7 floors to 70 floors. And for a long time, it was how do we get the most out of it, which meant build the biggest building, fit the biggest number of desks, and everybody go about their day. But we're at a place where technology is allowing us to do so much more. I think, going forward, office buildings, which is, an industry that's I breathe and live. The office is changed into, a place where people will want to meet and collaborate. I joined Honeywell in the middle of a pandemic, and, onboarding virtually is certainly one of the most challenging things I've had to do in my professional life. I think, when we think about what the office of the value, I hear a lot of customers saying, well, it's aside from real estate costs, like, if we want to, grow our company culture, and how do we onboard new hires, and how do they know what our company culture is? That's really hard to do behind a screen. So I think, the sustainable aspect, the occupant experience aspect, the purpose, the human-centric design that is going into buildings now, to me is, it's fascinating and it's very interesting. And I'll end by saying, the ability to connect systems and to be able to get data, right? So, we have, tons and tons of data from different systems. And the more integrated they are, the more data we can get. You mentioned space utilization, how many people are coming into what floor. That lets you determine how often you need to hire cleaning services. How many lunches do you need to buy for tomorrow based on, attendance on every Wednesday for the past 6 months. And then now I think the next step forward with, AI and machine learning technology is, all of the data that we're able to extract. What does it mean? What analytics? What decisions? How can we help our stakeholders convince their internal stakeholders on strategic decisions that'll input their performance, their employee engagement, productivity, the bottom line. So I think we're at an age where I think we're just getting started. So that's very exciting. I know I went a little long. I'm a bit passionate on the subject, but I guess the last question I'd like to ask you, Sunil, is can you please summarize what are the benefits of implementing carbon reduction and sustainable technologies? I know you've touched a lot of these aspects, but if you could summarize the both, I guess, financial and non-financial benefits of implementing carbon reduction and sustainable technologies.
Yeah, absolutely, Jose. And by the way, I see, you are equally passionate like I am. I've been with Honeywell for about 20 years, Jose. So I think we share some of the same visions. So no, absolutely. Look, for commercial real estate, you want to make your assets more valuable. You want to be the market leader. There is clear delineation between being a market leader and then catching up. Because if you're going to be catching up, I think some of these things are table stakes now. Just to be in business, you have to implement, otherwise it's going to be a challenge. Somebody else is going to come and take over the business. Because tenants, customers, investors, all of them are looking at, again, who is going ahead with green buildings? Who is implementing sustainable type of technologies? That is where they are diverting their investment. That is where they are going to occupy the buildings. Now, tenants are going to occupy the buildings, and so it has clear tangible values. I think the myth was that when you start, sustainability is also expensive. When you invest in sustainability, there isn't a proper return on investment, and that is a myth, because now sustainability technologies or sustainable technologies over the years have become much more cost effective and provide a business economics. There is a return on investment, and you will see that your assets become more valuable in the market. Your buildings will be higher occupied, will have higher occupancy rate. You could charge tenants a premium based on the facilities you are providing within your premises. At the same time, the savings what you are getting based on the type of your lease, you can pass on those savings to the tenant. At the end of the day, you're going to get a higher tenant satisfaction and get long-term business. So by implementing these cutting-edge sustainable technologies, you are actually eliminating that enterprise business risk. Because end of the day, you need to take out that risk out of your product, out of your offering, out of your business. And that is what you are doing by implementing sustainable technologies. So it has both tangible and intangible benefits. I can go on and on this, Jose. This is what I love to do, and talking to my customers as well.
Perfect. Thank you. No, I absolutely understand you're a hot commodity, and thank you for being a part of this conversation today. So with that, Gina, I want to thank everybody in our audience, and I'd like to head it over to you to see if we have any questions that we're more than glad to answer.
Thank you, Jose and Sunil again. All right, we have a few questions from the audience. So, one of our participants made the comment that these systems sound a lot like office buildings, where landlords have the ability to run systems they provide. But how about multi-tenant buildings where the tenants control the building systems? How can an owner implement sustainability measures?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the solutions what we discussed apply to multi-tenants, mixed-use buildings, a variety of different facilities. Because when we deal with commercial real estate, look, number one thing is you need to provide tenants visibility, right? I mean, what is your carbon footprint? You need to provide them zone level visibility on how much energy footprint they are consuming. If they are occupying only certain amount of floors of and this is very common in New York, right? I mean, where I live close by, uh, a building will be occupied by 50, 60 different tenants, and you have to provide them visibility of how much you are consuming. And if I'm able to save, because the building landlord still control all the base building equipment, so they still control the common area, they still control all the central heating and chilled water plants. So they can implement a variety of different things which will have a direct correlation to the tenants, and providing that visibility, passing on those savings, what they do, I think they are going to make the tenants more happy.
Yeah, and to that, Sunil, so I completely agree. So a building owner, has to have base systems in his building in order to be able to operate. But something that they want to give the tenant the freedom to want to implement their own systems and their own experience within their own space. So what that means for us is, we can cater both to the building owner that has multiple tenants, and he can provide customized information on a per tenant level, per floor, however they want to slice the data. But we also have the ability to work with a tenant and sort of sit on top of those base building systems to provide the specific tenant the information and services and solutions that they require.
Another participant commented that they have a colleague who's designing a state-of-the-art facility in Houston, and sustainability is super important for this development. Where do you recommend to get started making sure they include the proper features?
Yeah, again, that is a great question, because I mean, we have heard about design for Six Sigma, but I think the time now is design for sustainability. So when you are getting started with a project, you have to make sure, you incorporate the right specifications towards creating a sustainable building. Whether you are going for a LEED certification or not, depending on the investment you are trying to make, you would want to consider some of those certifications, which will help you design that building for the future, and then be able to retain those certifications, right? It's not just creating your building for which is much more sustainable, but retaining it so that it doesn't drift is also a critical aspect. And you will need to incorporate all of this during design conditions. So when I work very closely with developers, architects, consultants, when they start their journey of designing a property, we start talking about, here's what you need to incorporate to create a sustainable design for your premises.
Absolutely. And to that, Sunil, I'll just add, and this is maybe, sort of in the early stages and at a high level, but, sit down with your internal stakeholders and decide, what characteristics do you want from your building? And you go from there. And we do it all the time with our customers. And, a lot of times they'll have a plan and we'll go, okay, perfect. That's, totally acceptable. But, run us through why you did this and why you're making these decisions. And in the end, I think what every company in the world that's constructing a building, an office building or anything else is, there's a vision. And then, they at the end, they end up with their constructed building. And, the question I would ask, is it everything you wanted and hoped for? And if the answer is no, is okay, then, go to the drawing board and really come up with what outcomes, from sustainability, from brand image, from occupant experience, from like utility, what function is the building going to have? And these are all very tangible things that, need to be thought of, especially since, the office of the future has changed from what it was 20 or 30 years ago because of hybrid work. And because of technology, advancing at such a rapid pace.
Excellent. Another question came through. How can I learn more about the sustainability journey if my building is older?
Yeah, again, that is a very, very important question. We get this all the time, because if you look new construction, there's a little new construction happening, right? Especially, I mean, in the United States market. But most of the buildings what we occupy are existing buildings. So there are a variety of different retrofit opportunities. There are a variety of different higher efficiency systems available out there. I mean, I'll give you an example of LED lights, right? I mean, if you have fluorescent light, I mean, the simplest thing will be to swap it with a LED light. I mean, the payback is less than a year. I mean, depending on, of course, the size and quantity of lighting what you're using. Like that, there are so many different LED type of systems. I'm just using that as an analogy, which can be retrofitted, and all of this have a payback and ROI, return on investment. So most of our customers who we work for are existing buildings, have an existing portfolio, and there is a variety of different things, I mean, which we could be doing, not only just from retrofitting, but also protecting your investment, but at the same time making your building smarter to get ready, I mean, to deliver the optimized building performance. Jose, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so yeah, I forget the specific figure, but it's like 70% of the building stock in the US, or close to 80% was built before 1980. And that's just because our big metropolitan areas are older cities. But that's it's companies are still investing in acquiring assets because they're in prime location. It's location, location, location. The retrofitting your building to be up to date, sustainability is definitely a part of it, but it helps you bring your building into the future. And it can start with as simple as BMS system and fire and security. Every base system that a building can have has advanced so much in the last forget 20-30 years, like in the last 10 years. So it again, I always talk about, instead of just getting a system because a building needs a security systems, okay, let's talk about the outcomes that you're interested in achieving, and then design those systems or those upgrades. And it can be as simple or as complex as the budget allows. But I completely agree with what you mentioned, Sunil. It can be as easy in the sustainability journey as getting LED lights.
Yep.
Another question, how can I learn more about the sustainability journey if my business or building is older?
Yeah, I think it is very relevant, I mean, to the earlier question what we asked. I mean, most of the buildings what we occupy were constructed, I mean, 50, 60, 100 years back. If your building is older, I mean, if I'm sure, I mean, your corporation has a soft or a hard pledge to become carbon neutral. You have to start with baselining, like I mentioned. I mean, you have to start understanding, I mean, what is your footprint, what is your energy consumption pattern. Eventually, even develop a carbon abatement curve, so that you can start, I mean, working on the low-hanging fruits first, the easier, simpler projects, and then take upon larger projects to get to your sustainability journey. And that is where, I mean, we provide, I mean, that end-to-end solution, as well as, I mean, end-to-end journey mapping on how you can get from point A to point B. So, Jose, anything else, I mean, you'd like to add?
Oh no, I think you hit it right on the money. I would just ask everyone, make the phone call, just start that conversation, baselining. If you can't measure, you can't improve. And once you can improve, you can strategize about it. So that, I agree with everything you mentioned, Sunil.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Where do I go to find information about EV charging?
That's a good one. That's a fantastic question, actually. So within, I mentioned earlier about Honeywell Building Sustainability Manager. One of the modules which we are enabling within that system is managing your EV charging stations. You see a lot of electrification happening around us, correct? I mean, you'll see every parking lot or every space, I mean, building has a couple of charging stations or more number of charging stations. Now, what is happening today is these charging stations are set up in a low power mode. So what that means is, I mean, a car which can be charged in a few hours, even if you leave that overnight, I mean, you will find that it is charged only like 100 miles or 50, 60 miles. Because building owners are risk averse. They are wanting to make sure that all of a sudden, if I've got 10 cars charging in my premises, it doesn't blow up my transformer because the buildings are not prepared. So part of sustainability manager, we are implementing smarter technology where you do that entire load management. And you not only create that enhanced good customer experience for the people, I mean, who own electric cars and want to charge it in your premises. At the same time, you are safeguarding your assets, your equipment, your transformers, your power units, so that you create a very good end-to-end experience. So for EV charging, again, I mean, we have solutions. We will be providing, I mean, EV charging controllability right from the building management system and right through the sustainability manager portal, whereby, I mean, you can monitor, manage, control, check out, I mean, how many stations are on, how many are under repair, initiate repair requests. It's all again a fully closed loop system, end-to-end controls. So we would be happy to provide, I mean, more content offline as needed on this, Gina.
Yeah, and I just want to add, that's a very interesting topic that we could have in a full hour discussion on, starting from, how many EV spaces are enough, and, what are city regulations going to be around that. But like Sunil mentioned, please feel free to contact us. It's going to be a part of the sustainability manager offering. Something that we did mention earlier is, where Honeywell is very invested in sustainability. It's a standalone business unit that launched in 2022. And, we're very excited to help you in your sustainability journey.
All right, Jose, Sunil, thank you again for sharing your expertise on this webinar. And thank you everyone with us today for attending. As a reminder, the recording will be emailed to all registered attendees. For more information on sustainability in commercial real estate, visit Honeywell online at buildings.honeywell.com. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.